It was the most beautiful, horrific experience of my life. Horrific because I felt in every cell of my being, I felt the pain that my children felt when I cheated on their mom.
Connect with us on the Emotion Wellness Podcast for a transformative journey of human connection. Witness personal stories, improve your mental health education, and acquire valuable resources for optimizing your well-being. And visit emotionwellness.com for more information.
Welcome to the Emotion Wellness Podcast. My name is Jason Turner, and as always, I'm here with my friend and brother, Mr. Frank Parisi.
We're here today, and we have, what a special guest today. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Paul Hutchinson, the producer of The Sound of Freedom. What an honor it is to have you on, my brother. It really, truly is. This is amazing, and we appreciate you coming on, taking the time to take time with us today, and we appreciate everything that you do for humanity, brother. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Frank. Super excited to be here. Yeah, I'm a primary investor and executive producer in the movie Sound of Freedom, and beyond that, I've been in the pit of hell. I've led over 70 undercover child rescue missions, 15 countries. So excited to share that and the journey to what liberating humanity is all about, not just helping to liberate the children.
I love that.
Yeah, when I started to look into your background, I'm so interested in the undercover, that whole process, the motivation, how you got into that. So definitely would love to explore some of that if you're interested and willing.
Absolutely, Jason. Yeah, we can go wherever your audience wants us to go. We've had for years I couldn't go into that because I was still in the space of undercover. But once the movie came out, we decided that I needed to go public and share some stories and connect with the right people so that we can make an impact in the world together.
How did that whole process start? Like, how did you get into, or what, let me back that up. What was the moment you knew this is the work that I want to do? Like, I'm going to go undercover, I'm going to put myself at risk, and I'm going to pursue this as my meaning and my mission and my purpose.
The moment that changed everything, I was already in that space. I had been recruited by some former undercover agents and some people who worked with Homeland Security, introduced to them by the Attorney General. But it was in Colombia. It was on the mission that we got highlighted in the movie Sound of Freedom. And I was sitting on a chair, and these traffickers had brought 54 children to this party. And one of them was a little 11-year-old boy who they had given cocaine that morning because he was so scared. What kind of monster thinks that that's attractive? Mm-hmm. And sitting on this chair, they had paraded out these other, what they called 0-kilometer miles, these innocent children. And one of them was an 11-year-old girl. And she was standing in front of me. Her eyes were red because she had been crying. In fact, they had put makeup on her face and it had been smeared because she had been crying. And she had this little kitty cat on her shirt, and her hair was braided. And I was sitting down, she standing up. We were almost eye level. And all I could see was fear in that little girl's eyes. And I made a commitment at that moment to myself, to God, to that child, that I would dedicate my life to eradicating that evil from the face of the earth. So that's the moment that everything changed for me. At that point, I told the operator, I said, look, I spent my whole life making money, making rich people richer. I want to make a difference. I want to dedicate my life to helping in this. What can I do? And at that point, he said, Paul, he said, there's a lot of demand for horrific things like this that come from guys with big egos and arrogance and greed and lust and big checkbooks, and guys like the Jeffrey Epsteins of the world and his clients. He said, I can't teach my Navy SEALs how to wear a $50,000 watch and a really nice suit and negotiate a multi-million-dollar deal like you did. He said, I've never found an ultra successful business owner who's had the training that you've had. He said, if you're willing to be the bait, I'll change your whole life. And that was the beginning of what ended up being 10 years in leading or playing a key part in over 70 missions in 15 countries, seeing the worst that humanity has to offer, and also seeing the beautiful light at the end of the tunnel with the rescue and rehabilitation and reuniting of these children with their families.
Wow.
Just hearing you say that was an experience for me right now. I'm curious about my background is in screwing up my life and then changing it and becoming a therapist in the mental health space. And so I always go to hearing something as intense. I mean, I just had an experience with thinking about what you've witnessed, what you've seen. I'm curious about the impact on you personally and how you've taken care of that.
Yeah.
That is the story right there. And it's what liberating humanity is all about. I started the Child Liberation Foundation many years ago to help work on eradicating child trafficking. Yet, after 10 years of doing undercover work, I came to an understanding that darkness that was creating that came from all of us. People like you and I would never, ever be in a position where we would ever hurt a child. However, I recognized in that space that the common thread with the traffickers was not earrings in their noses and tattoos on their necks. The common thread with these traffickers was arrogance and greed and lust and addictions. And I had to look in the mirror myself and say, Paul, you're doing great things. You're helping these kids, but how has arrogance, greed, and lust and addictions, how have they affected your life and the people around you? And I came to understand that there's something that I call tension transfer. If you go to work, you're out of integrity, you yell at somebody at work, or you do something that kind of pushes them over the edge, and he goes home and he yells at his wife, and she yells at her little boy when he comes home from school, and then that little boy kicks the dog. The truth is that kicking of that dog was tension transfer from you not fixing your shit, right? From me not fixing my shit. And so then I came to recognize that hurt people hurt other people. And don't get me wrong in saying this. Some people, they're like so mad. They're like, oh, you're a sympathizer. No, I am not a sympathizer ever of anybody who ever hurts a child. I've literally put my life in danger hundreds of times to ensure that innocence is never hurt again. But I came to understand that almost all of the traffickers were trafficked themselves as children. Almost all of the perpetrators had dealt with childhood pain themselves. In fact, over 70% of incarcerated felons talk about the fact that they were abused as children, either verbally or physically, or in many times sexually abused as children. And so we live in this world of generational trauma. We live in this world of unhealed adults that are passing on their trauma to others in all kinds of unhealthy ways. And what had happened with my situation, and this is incredibly powerful. I was about 3 years into undercover work. And understand this, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, I wasn't Paul Hutchinson. I was I was Paul fucking Hutchinson, right? I had built a multi-billion-dollar company. I had 4,000 employees when I got recruited. I'm the co-founder of Bridge Investment Group. We're now, at the time, we had billions of dollars of assets under management. I had a house where I had 8 private suites, 10 bathrooms, 3 kitchens, 7 fireplaces in my house, and a basketball court in my basement. And in the basketball court, and this is a full court. I mean, this was massive. And I built a DJ booth on the side of my court and put these massive TVs and these speakers and these lights so I could have massive parties. And I put stripper poles on my stage. This was the life I was living. It was a life of greed. It was a life of just, you can call it whatever you want to. It was not in line with the highest and best version of me. And that's one of the reasons I was recruited, is that it was guys with big checkbooks and big egos that these traffickers were looking for. And so I was able to with my profile and whatever online, was able to seduce these traffickers into opening up access to their entire network. And we took down their networks and rescued thousands of children through the Child Liberation Foundation and other foundations that I have helped to start and fund. Over 7,000 children are now back to their families. And that's just a huge number. However, the truth is there are billions of people that are not living in alignment. There are billions of people who are holding on to pain of their childhood. And this is the life I was living 10 years ago, before my major breakthrough that changed everything for me. And if you want, I'll go into depth as to what that was, what that looked like, and how that changed everything, unless you have questions up to that part.
We like going deep. So
okay, yeah, I'm gonna go deep then. I'm gonna be full disclosure here. This is
I absolutely love it. Yeah, I love that.
This is me. So here I was, almost 3 years into undercover work, seeing the darkest part of humanity in every way, and we were blowing through undercover operators. I had Green Berets with 300 missions in Afghanistan and the Middle East that already had PTSD, and then one mission with me in Ecuador to go help rescue children, and seeing a menu with children's faces on this menu and a list of things and how much they would cost, and it just took him over. The PTSD just took him over the edge, and so I was blowing through undercover operators. We couldn't keep him in because it was so dark. And I had 2 of my operators, Jimmy and Andy, call me on the phone together. Now, Jimmy had done 13 undercover missions with me, and Andy had done 22. They had seen the darkness that I had seen, and they saw the darkness in me and how heavy it was on me, just trying to fight this evil. And they said, "Paul, do you trust us?" I said, I trust you with my life, literally. Undercover, I'm in charge of talking. They're in charge of making sure I don't die. And they said, you need to come to this healing retreat with us. I'm like, I don't need to heal. I'm Paul effing Hutchinson. Everybody wants to be me. They're like, no, you're on your second marriage, headed for a divorce. Your kids don't talk to you. You think that one more girl, one more car, one more party is going to make you happy? And we know it leaves you empty. Even one more rescue mission isn't as fulfilling because you're not living the life that you really should be living. And they said this is going to be one of the most transformational. This will be the most transformational experience of your life. And I'm like, you know what? That's saying something. I've done transformational retreats. I know Tony Robbins personally. I literally have walked across coals multiple times with him standing right next to me. I've done transformational shit. You can't tell me this is going to be the most transformational experience. And then they said this doctor has identified some tools to help people break free of anxiety, depression, PTSD, addictions, childhood trauma. in a very short period of time, and have significant changes within a period of 3 or 4 days. And then I called total BS on them because, a little bit of background. Before I started the investment fund, my first successful company in my early 20s was a company that helped people overcome anxiety, depression, PTSD, addictions, childhood trauma. I had 50, this was 35 years ago. I had one of those infomercials with the company I was working with. I owned Midwest Center Marketing. We own the marketing rights globally for a company called the Midwest Center for Stress and Anxiety. We had 50,000 people a month calling in off of an infomercial to get a workbook, a video, audio programs, cognitive restructuring to help people overcome the negative habit patterns of thought, the get into the deep trauma to help them break free of these things that are so debilitating. And so many Americans deal with it that I sold that company for $20 million when I was 29 years old. This was the money that I used to help start the fund and do all of the charity work and everything else. And so I was very, very blessed in that at a very young age. But as we just talked about, it led to a life of debauchery. I had created myself created trauma from my massive ego, and it was super unhealthy. And so I trusted these. So these guys say they can do it in 3 or 4 days. I said, that's BS. I said, we were one of the best companies in the country at helping people with that. And it took us 12 weeks with a personal coach, 1 to 2 hours a day, to help people start breaking free of some of these things that were so damaging. And you can't do that quickly. Well, now this part's going to surprise you, but I'm just going to tell you what it is. You can just understand it, because I think that audiences everywhere need to understand how to use this stuff properly. So they had been working with a doctor and a therapist who had traveled around the world and identified different types of holistic therapy for emotional trauma. And she was using, she had been working for years on the proper use of psychedelics when it comes to trauma therapy, anxiety, depression, PTSD, addictions, etc. And at the time, I'm like, wait a minute, things like psilocybin, that's dangerous, right? That's like cocaine. That's a Schedule I drug. And I found out that the Johns Hopkins studies say that psilocybin was safer than table sugar. There's never been a case of addiction, never been a case of overdose, not one, ever. And when used properly, this is so important, when used properly, it creates a window of opportunity for a trained facilitator to create significant change in a very short period of time. And it became, that next 2 days was the most transformational experience of my entire life. What happened is that the doctor was using a very specific frequency, very specific music. There's 180 different strands of psilocybin, was using some very specific ones that help break down some ego space. And it was the most beautiful, horrific experience of my life. Horrific because I felt in every cell of my being, I felt the pain that my children felt when I cheated on their mom, as if I was them. And it was so hard, and it was so dark, and I could barely breathe because I could feel just the heaviness of all of my actions. And then I could feel the joy of the children that we helped to rescue, and as they were returned with their families. And then I felt the pain of the family that broke up because some guy was at my party and slept with a cheerleader, and now his wife left him. And not only the pain of that immediate action, but then I could foresee what would happen in a fatherless home where they were broken up, and because of all the trauma there, and the daughter gets knocked up or the son gets addicted to drugs, and all of the literally the ripple effect of my actions was so profound that everything began to change for me. And I recognized that I had lost my connection with God. In fact, I had told the facilitators we came in, and this is important from a scientific standpoint. Let me take 30 seconds on this. So when we're children, when we're 0 to 9, 10 years old, our brain is in a state of neuroplasticity, hyper neuroplasticity. We can learn 3 or 4 languages at the same time. That we're learning to walk, we're learning to eat, we're learning to play, and all of these different things. Our brain is just soaking it all in. They're very, very, very impressionable. But if something happens in those formative years, your uncle touches you, your father says you aren't smart enough to do something, whatever it is, those things get imprinted into our subconscious mind. And literally 95% of our day is managed, is run by that subconscious mind. And after 9 or 10 years old, in order to get something new in that subconscious mind, it's going to take about 21 days to create a new habit, because it's super, solid in there. It's kind of like, you lay the concrete foundation for a freeway, and you don't smooth it out. That's our subconscious mind. And you go through life driving on this thing, just bumping all over. And in order to smooth out the bumps, it takes 21 days of chiseling to get through it. Well, what if you could just touch the concrete and turn it back into the liquid state for a period of 4 or 5 hours, and then have a machine come through and smooth it out so you don't have to chisel it? Well, that's scientifically what happens with the proper use of something like psilocybin. And I say this is so important to talk about, because guys like RFK and Trump have already said they're going to decriminalize the use of these. And when that happens, we cannot have people running around going to a rave party, getting high with their friends on mushrooms. This is dangerous, because if you have a state of neuroplasticity, which is what happens, it literally turns it back into that very impressionable form. If you're in that neuroplasticity and you're at a rave party and some guy's yelling at his wife over here, and there's an orgy going over here, and there's rap music going on over here, that negative energy can create more harm than good. But if you can take that opportunity, which what happened to me in this state, this neuroplasticity state, and have a loving, trained facilitator say, okay, now we're going to work through this. We're going to work through these ego things. We're going to work through your relationship with God. We're going to work through this childhood trauma. We're going to work through your anxiety, your depression, your PTSD, whatever it is. Then it's during that state of neuroplasticity, we're able to create significant change. So I became a master facilitator, have now hosted and facilitated 76 as of today, guided meditation, breath work, facilitated plant medicine healing retreat experiences, and have gotten really good at understanding that space, and am one of the top experts in the country at explaining the proper use of it. And so that's what changed for me. And we can talk about my relationship with God and how that changed afterwards, et cetera, et cetera. But all of it was because I was beyond help. I would go to therapists 12 years ago and try to seduce my own therapist, right? I'd find a hot one, and that's kind of the energy I was in. I was unfixable with the unmitigated ego that I had created.
Wow. Everything you said resonates exactly what we do over here. Exactly.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Love that.
Yeah. So
Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, I would love to hear more about, like, how did it truly change your relationship with God? I've gone through similar experiences as you without the psilocybin, because I actually passed away and left here, and I've had similar experiences of you, like feeling all of the things that I've done in my past, and feeling a lot of, like, almost like the guy from the Green Mile, feeling a lot of everything, and seeing myself in everyone. And just seeing the signs of how God shows up every single day in my life. I see it today. I see a lot. I see my whole purpose here and my mission. I want to see, like, and that was all due to my heart transplant and everything that I went through. But through this experience, how has that shifted your relationship with God, the universe, the creator, the source?
Well, it changed everything. I left the church of my youth many years ago. I was I was raised in Utah, and was very you couldn't drink coffee, couldn't drink tea, alcohol, tobacco. I was raised Mormon, and I left it a number of years ago. And in doing so, I thought, you know what, if that church isn't true, then maybe God isn't true, and whatever. And I just kind of went down this dark road, right? And it was beautiful because in this experience with the facilitator, after I came out of that pure empathy state where I literally was connecting to all of humanity, and the ripple effect of my actions was so profound in everything that happened. I was sitting there on a couch, and this isn't microdosing. This is a full ceremonial dose. I mean, you need help walking to the bathroom type stuff, right? But in a very strong neuroplasticity state, with the right music going on, coming in with the right intentions, etc. And I remember pointing out these statues. I had these huge Greek god statues, these made out of bronze, and I had Zeus and Poseidon, and I had Atlas in the middle. And if you've ever read the book Atlas Shrugged, where Atlas is holding the world on the shoulder, and he's the doer and the creator and whatever. Well, I told the facilitator, I said, I feel like I was still in my ego self, right? I feel like Atlas. I've got 4,000 employees at my company, and they all rely upon, me bringing in the money. But look how strong God made me. Look at the stomach muscles of that statue. God made me strong enough to hold all of that weight. And, the facilitator, her name was Nancy, she, smiled, listened to my ego for a minute. And then she said, Paul, I honor the fact that you're seeing some positive traits in those Greek gods. She says, but you know as well as I do that those were mythological gods. She said, what about your relationship with him? And she points at a statue I had of Jesus and of Yeshua. And I said, I don't qualify for a relationship with him. And she said, well, why not? I said, well, I've broken commandments in my life. I don't live by the law like I'm supposed to. And when I left the church of my youth, my bishop told me that until I was rebaptized into that church, I wouldn't have the Spirit of God with me. She said, do you really think that that's true? I'm like, well, no, I try to do good things. I do a lot of charity work. She said, why don't you work on that relationship for a little while? And so here I'm, I can barely walk. I'm trying to take the statue down. She helps me take it down, and we sit down on my beanbag, and I hold that statue for the next 2 hours and reestablish a relationship with Yeshua that I had never, ever had with Jesus. And it was super beautiful. And from that point, I learned how to meditate. And I go super deep daily in my meditation. And as part of that meditation, I have to feel my connectedness with the universe, with my divine creator, and with all of humanity, in order for me to start going deeper. And so I envision this light coming from the source of all creation, from God and through the universe into my body. I feel and visualize it expanding my heart with infinite, unconditional love and just flowing through me. And I feel it touching not only my family and my friends and my team, but beyond that, literally connecting me with humanity. And it changes how I connect with people every day, and recognizing that I am you, you are me, we are brothers, we are connected. And even, even the little squirrel running across the road in front of me down the road, there's a beautiful, loving, energetic, divine connection with all things. And that has greatly impacted that ego self and how I show up every day in the lives of my family and my team and humanity as a whole.
I love that. absolutely love that. I relate so much to that, Paul. I relate so much to you.
Well, I watched some of your videos, Frank, and I'm super impressed with how you have chosen to live your life after your transformation, where, you know, we all go through a dark night of the soul, whether that's a near-death experience or a guided meditation, or we just hit rock bottom with our addictions and our wife leaves us and everything falls apart in our life. Whatever it is, once we get to that point where there's nowhere to go but up, that's when we change our view from looking down to looking up. And once we do so, the light of all of creation is there, and we recognize. I remember when I was in that state of my transformation, I was having such a hard time. I felt like you know, Satan had his foot on my chest, and I was 600 miles in the dirt, and I could feel all of the ripple effect of my actions and my words and everything that was negatively affecting the people around me in any way. And then the facilitator had me change the playlist, the song that I was listening to, because it was this meditation, deep, you know, beat song, whatever. And I felt this new frequency song came through, and I could feel God's hand literally pulling me out of the tar, and all this shit just falling off of me. And it was so beautiful, recognizing that everything of my past, everything that I have done, and everything that was done to me, all of it can heal. It's all going to require the help of God to do so, but all of it can heal, and none of it has to belong to the highest and best version of me moving forward in my future. And so I honor you for how you have not only gone through that experience and said, wow, I'm glad I didn't die, but no, I'm gonna show up every day in a way that's going to bring positivity to the world, in helping others recognize that they can go through the pit of hell, and but they can look upwards and see the light and pull themselves through and not have to go back to where they were.
Absolutely, brother. That's why I knew in that hospital that, you know, because I come from a lot of trauma too. You know, there's a whole backstory to my life, and I knew, you know, God used me like in my addiction to be able to find recovery and help so many people. And then I knew when I was going through the transplant that he was using me again to be able to serve. I actually was writing about that on my social media while I was in the hospital, that I knew he was using me as a vessel to be able to serve humanity, you know. And I'll be honest with you, like, I wouldn't change any of it, you know, everything that happened to me, because there's evils in the world, Paul. Like, we see the darkness, you know. I believe that a lot of my generational trauma, like we spoke about, was passed down. I think that my whole process here on this planet is spiritual in nature, and that, you know, those traumas are passed down, and God wanted to remove my heart so that I could have Kaylee's young heart and be able to fulfill the mission that he has for me here, you know, which is to truly change the paradigm for my future generations, and to help raise the vibration of our planet and get them closer to God through my journey, you know. And I just honor you, man, and everything that you've told us today. I mean, it's been, outstanding and beautiful, and you are just an amazing human being and the light in our world, man. And I just want to honor you because I appreciate you so much, you know.
I appreciate that. I've just realized I'm a tool in God's hands, and you know, when I made that commitment in front of that little girl years ago, that I was going to dedicate my life to eradicating that evil from the face of the earth. And then I realized 10 years later that there was more kids being sold today than there was 10 years ago. I had to ask myself, what really needs to change? And I recognized that it wasn't just rescuing the children. You know, we were making a powerful, positive impact in the lives of those children, getting them back to their families. But the problem is that every time we pulled 20 kids out of hell, if not enough was being done to fix the demand, then another 20 children were being sucked back into the most unimaginable darkness just to fill that demand. And so I had to change my focus and say, you know what? Maybe my own transformation from being a man of greed and envy and lust and addictions, maybe that's the story that humanity needs to hear. Not just the one about rescuing the kids, but how do we each show up? Now, we go back to that story that I talked about earlier on tension transfer. You go and you yell at the guy at work, and let's say that I hadn't fixed my, we're all a work in progress. I haven't fixed everything yet, right? But let's say I hadn't worked on what I had, and let's say that I had a bad night and I was yelling at my ex-wife or whatever, and I go into work and I yell at some guy at work. But what I don't realize is that instead of him having a healthy marriage at home, what I didn't realize is that his wife had just left him. And she just left him because of his alcohol problem. But what I also didn't realize is that he had been abused as a child, and because of that abuse made a lot of other bad decisions in his life that led him down a dark road. And let's say that he was addicted to pornography, and in that addiction, combined with his childhood trauma, combined with his alcoholism, combined with his bad decisions, he decides that he wants to start looking at pornography that's even more violent, or rape videos, or even younger and younger type things to get that same fix in his addiction. And now he's fantasizing about things he wouldn't have even thought was attractive 5 or 10 years before. And now, this weekend that I just yelled at him and he went home and his wife had already left him, and he gets drunk, and this happens to be the weekend that his 12-year-old daughter is staying at his house with her little cousin. Now, the tension transfer of me being out of integrity, combined with all of the decisions that he had made, literally, that tension transfer hurts a child. So all of us have to take a look at how we're showing up in the world, how we're showing up. I love the story of the man who's sitting on a couch, and some people have already heard this, but he's sitting on a couch and he's reading a newspaper, and his little boy comes in and says, Daddy, I want to play baseball. His dad says, oh no, I'm sorry, I'm busy right now. Oh, okay. A few minutes later, his boy comes back, Daddy, please, can we play baseball? And the man turns the page of the newspaper and he sees this globe. He sees this map of the world, and he tears out this map and he tears it up in little teeny pieces of paper and he throws it on the floor. And he says to his little boy, he says, you know what? You need to learn your geography. He said, you get some tape and you tape together every single one of the countries exactly where they need to be. And as soon as you're done with that, I'll go play baseball with you. So thinking it's going to take a few hours, he goes back to reading his newspaper. In about 5 more minutes, the little boy comes back and it's taped together perfectly. And the dad is like, what did you do? How did you do that? The little boy turns it over. He says, oh, there was a picture of a man on the other side. I just put the man together and the whole world came together. Mm-hmm. And that's really the key for all of us. We've got to look at the man in the mirror. We sit here and try to think, I'm going to go fix the world. I'm going to go save all the kids. I'm going to rescue these kids. I'm going to build a big company. I'm going to have this philanthropy. We need to look in the mirror and say, what do I need to do to change that man so that I can show up in a way that's going to have a positive impact? And we all sit back and think, well, we're not going to be able to change the whole world. There's 8.5 billion people in the world. Well, guess what? If you spent an entire year just working on yourself, and the next year spent that entire year mentoring 2 other people to fix their shit, to break free of their addictions, to overcome their anxiety, their depression, to break free of their childhood trauma, whatever it is that's keeping them from being their best self and from having a positive impact in the world. And let's say that the next year, those two spend an entire year helping 2 more people. Now, you're 3 years into it and you've only helped 6 people, right? Plus yourself. However, if that continues, that pay it forward every single year, 2 people helping 2 more people, in 33 years, you've helped the entire global population. Over 8 billion people have been helped and healed because of your actions. So the ripple effect of our good or of our bad is something that we all need to recognize and show up for.
Yeah.
It resonates with me quite a bit, and the thing that comes to mind for me is and I could be way off, but the resistance, right? It's in the realm of radical accountability, right? Is, for lack of a better term. I'm curious how you if you're focused on the people who want it, like when I first got sober, right? It was like trying to convince everybody, shouting at the rooftops. And then mentor said, you're going to be way more effective if you spend time with people who actually want it and want to go forward with it versus trying to convince people who don't. And I just imagine there's just so much resistance to that level of accountability, right? I get it. Like when you told the story about the tension transfer, it's like, real easy for someone to be like, the guy who goes home and does that to his kid, that's his choice. It had nothing to do with me. And I'd love to hear how you navigate.
The truth is, it is, he made a lot of bad decisions in his life. However, all of us need to pay attention to how we're affecting the world around us. Because, a lot of those bad decisions and the bad things that he went through was because there were other people throughout his life that didn't take radical accountability. His mother, his aunt, his teacher, that didn't take that accountability. I did an interview on my, I have the Liberating Humanity podcast. And I interviewed somebody just last week on Liberating Humanity that, he was in the foster care program. He went through unimaginable abuse as a child in the foster care program, and he was headed for the same place that a lot of people do, going to end up with a life of crime and or suicide or whatever. And he had a librarian at his school who took radical responsibility, took him under her wing, told him, listen, you have a choice every single day to let your past dictate your future or make those changes today. And by her stepping forward and being that person in his life, he changed everything. He ended up building a drone company that he sold for millions of dollars by the time he was 19 years old, and then build another one that has contracts with the Department of Defense with massive success. And, he ended up adopting his librarian as his new mother. And they have a beautiful relationship today, but she didn't have to do that. She didn't have to show up for that little broken boy, but she did. And so all of us can make that difference in the lives of others. It doesn't have to be just, quitting your job and going undercover and going rescuing kids. And no, it can be being that librarian who shows up for that little broken boy.
Amazing. Yeah.
After your the other question I have, or that I'm curious about, so that beautiful experience you had with the psychedelic retreat transformation, that was about 3 years into your undercover work. How did that incredible experience then impact the rest of the work after?
That's a great question. Great question. Because see, before that, I wasn't Paul Hutchinson. My undercover name was Paul Stone. And Paul Stone was a wealthy, ego, I had a Paul Stone profile on social media. All of the Paul Hutchinson stuff was gone, right? But I already had pictures of me with Lambos and Ferraris and hot girls and yachts and jets and all this crap, right? And so they had created this social media profile, and the operators would go in and connect with the traffickers, show them my profile. I would come in, with ego and grease and lust and just energy like that, and boom, they would throw together this party, and boom, this thing would happen, would arrest these guys and take him down. But I was still, it was, I was making a difference in the lives of kids, but having those stories now, I had the best panty dropper story on the planet, right? So it was feeding into my ego. And after this experience with this guided meditation and breath work and facilitated plant medicine experience, it was so profound for me that I started learning how to meditate, not only in, quiet in your day, but in transcendental meditation, in being able to, on the fly, being able to just close my eyes and drop into that place of my heart. In fact, I'm writing a book called Are You Listening? With my hand on my heart. Not are you listening with my hand on my ear, but are you listening here? In fact, I'm going to tell you a little story, and then we're going to come into using it in the undercover missions. I met a man by the name of Jerry Prine. Sadly, Jerry died a few years ago, but Jerry was the inventor of a whole bunch of life-saving medical devices. He was the inventor of the original software that IBM used for voice recognition on your Siri, your iPhone. I mean, all of this stuff. He invented a lot of these things, and he didn't have even an elementary school education. Jerry couldn't read or write. Yet he had been tested at the university as the highest IQ that they had ever tested, one of the highest IQs in the world at the time. And I sat down with him, and Jerry said to me, he said, "Paul," he said, "you could have an IQ over 200 if you wanted." And I said, "No, I'm really not that smart. I worked hard for my grades, and I didn't even get a scholarship. And I don't even think you can't change your IQ, can you?" And he said, "No." He said, "The difference between me and you is that I listen better than you." And I said, "You listen better than me?" I touched my ear. He said, "No, I listen better than you." And he touched his heart. Mm-hmm. And he said, "Paul," he said, "do you think that I'm the inventor of those medical devices?" I said, you have the patents, right?" He goes, "Yeah, I do." I said, "You're not the inventor?" He goes, "No, I'm not." I said, "What, you stole them?" He goes, "Well, kind of." He said, "How long has the universe been around?" I said, "Millions of years." He said, "Billions upon billions of years." He said, "Those medical devices were invented billions of years ago. I was a better listener than you." And he touched his heart again. He said, "You need to understand that we live in a world of universal truth, that we literally are connected with every person on the planet, heart to heart. We're connected with the infinite intelligence of the universe." He said, "Most people discount their intuitions because they know not from where they came. They think that those intuitions came from the books they've read and the people they've talked to and the information in their their conscious mind." He said, "When you understand that many of those things come from a place of infinite knowledge, infinite truth," he said, "you learn to trust them. They will direct your life in ways that you've never imagined." So, moving forward, once I had gone through this transformational experience and I had got out of my ego space and out of my conscious mind, and I started dropping in to my heart space, and I started really learning how to listen, then the missions completely changed. And I got really, really good at finding the kids, not through logic and protocol, but through listening from that place of the heart. I remember going in, I've got a couple stories I'll tell you that are just phenomenal. I went into, I remember I was in Haiti. I was with a new team. I hadn't worked with these guys before, and there's some, special forces guys. They've got, tattoos, and they're big dudes, and I'm just me, and it was about 2 a.m, and we hadn't connected with any traffickers. And I said, guys, can I take lead? Are you good with that? And they said, yeah. They said, you're really good at this. I want to see what you do. I said, okay, we need to follow exactly what I say. I've led at that point over 30 plus missions. I said, let's follow exactly what I say. I said, first things first, I need you to understand that I believe in God. I said, most people believe in a supreme being. Some people call him, Jehovah or Elohim or Heavenly Father, or some people think of the universe or source. I said, it doesn't matter. I said, God exists and cares more about these children than you and I ever could, and knows exactly where they are. So if you're okay with it, or even if you're not, I'm going to start out by asking for some help. So here we are, downtown Port-au-Prince, Haiti, the darkest, most voodoo-infested place on the Western Hemisphere, and we offer up a prayer. And then I said, guys, now I need you to understand how I see fear and faith. I said, most people think that faith is going to church and asking God to fix things in their life that they don't believe are going to be fixed. I said, that's not faith. That's blind hope. That's hoping that something's going to change. But if you don't believe it, it's not faith. I said, faith is an element, it's a principle of power. It's the most, next to unconditional love, it's the most powerful law in the universe. And it's simply this, it's the unwavering conviction that what I want to have happen will happen. The problem is that most people have a hard time with unwavering conviction about anything. Should I start this new job? Should I marry this woman? Should I move because they don't know if it's in line with what their God wants or what. I said it's easy for me to have unwavering faith, unwavering conviction here, because I don't care if you think if God's a man or a woman or a cloud or a mountain or a universe or what. I said, there's no virtuous, intelligent creator of the universe anywhere that's okay with an 8-year-old being raped. So it's easy for me to have unwavering conviction that we're going to find these kids. And so they're like, okay, dude, whatever. I said, just drive. And I'm just tuning in. I said, okay, stop right there. He said, that motorcycle gang guy, the black alley. I said, yeah, right there. He said, what are you going to do? I said, that guy knows something. I can feel it. He said, this is a dangerous area. He says, we need to survey the area first. I said, no. I said, we don't have time for that. In fact, I said, you guys are going to intimidate him. You guys need to stay in the van. I'm going to go talk to him myself. And they're like, Paul, are you stupid? I'm like, listen, I'll buy you pink panties when we get home. I don't have 2 weeks to find out who's selling kids. That guy knows something. I know it. I can feel it. I got out of the car and just tuning in. This guy pulls up his shirt and there's a gun that's tucked into his shorts. And I'm just listening. I pull out $100 bill. I hand it to him. He goes, what's that for? I said, that's for you. You keep it. I have another one for you if you can help me with something. I got a friend coming in town in a few weeks. He wants me to set up a party for him. And he likes 10-year-olds. This guy's like, your friend's fucked up. I said, yeah, he is. I said, but he pays me well to set up what he wants. He goes, well, I know who's running that. I knew he did. Absolutely knew he did. He makes a call to this lady. She connects me with this other one. We end up meeting. We end up taking down 4 corrupt federal judges during the course of that operation, taking down the largest child trafficking ring in the Caribbean through the connections from that guy. Wow. I remember walking in, there was this, it was a dark area of town. It was about 2 a.m. We had worked our way up to what I call, through him, connections to what I call a level 3 trafficker. This is one that physically holds the children in captivity. And this was a lady named Cho, big fat lady, and she had been trafficking kids since she was a little kid, right? Now, nothing against her weight, I'm going to point out all her flaws when she's addicted to all the things that she was addicted to. And this lady, she sticks this key in this door, and this red door, it's about 4 feet wide, 7.5 feet tall, steel door, opens it up. There's this dirt hallway and dimly lit lights and multiple cell doors inside this hallway. She sticks a key in one of these cell doors, no windows on it at all, opens it up. There's a room that's 5 feet wide, 6 feet deep, dirt floor, On the wall wasn't a bed, it was a steel plank that was held to the wall with a chain, with a dirty, dingy blanket sitting on that steel plank. To the left was a concrete block. There's a little girl sitting on that concrete block. She had been taken 7 years before when her parents died in the earthquake in Haiti. She had been sold 10, 20 plus times a day for 7 years.
Jeez.
That little girl didn't say one word after we rescued her. Not for 2 weeks she didn't say one word. And her very first words she said were, "I didn't think anybody would come." She gave up hope. She gave up hope 7 years before. And what makes me mad is that every single man who walked through those doors for 7 years was there to harm her. Me and Andy were the first ones to come through that door that didn't have that intention. Now she's learning to dance. She's in a healthy home. She's back in school. Every one of these kids have one of those stories. But Jason, my everything changed for me after that experience with the psilocybin. Every one of those operations, I would tune in to that still small voice of truth. I did one in Ecuador right before the movie came out, my last undercover mission. The federal agents had got a bunch of leads, and one of the leads was this was a spa that was doing fingernails and hair, and they had a massage thing in the back. The spa was just a front, but they were doing the unthinkable there, selling the kids. And we were driving, and the federal agent, he's like, "Oh shit." We said, "What?" He goes, "Oh, it's closed down." Closed down? He said, yeah, the spa was supposed to be here. He says, "The whole place is closed. They must have found out that we were coming." And I said, "Stop." He goes, "Stop." He says, "It's closed." I'm going to stop. I said, "Stop. I can feel it. They're still here." So boom, he stops the van. And I get out, Petter gets out. He was a Green Beret, hundreds of missions in Afghanistan, and he was there. And I had Jimmy and Jeremy that were there. They jump out, 2 operators. And we go around the back of the van, and I just stand there for a minute. I close my eyes. I take a deep breath in through my nose slowly, and out through my mouth with my eyes closed, just tuning into that heart space. And from that space, I opened my eyes, and I looked around, and immediately was drawn to the restaurant that was just a few doors down. I walk into that restaurant, walk right up to the manager, and I said, "Hey," I said, "there's supposed to be a massage place here. Do you know anything about it?" He goes, "Oh, you have an appointment?" Freaking knew that place was still there, right? And he goes, "Oh, no." He goes, "Oh, I don't want anything to do with it," right? And so so I walk out in front. There's people everywhere. And I do it again. I close my eyes in through my nose very slowly, hold it for a second, out through my mouth, moving into my heart space. Open my eyes, and I see one of the people walking by was a woman on the other side of the street. She was walking a dog. I knew she was the one. Walked up to her, said, "Hey, I have an appointment for a massage." You know, sometimes when you're undercover, you have to lie a little bit. So I says, "Yeah, I have an appointment." And she looks at me. I'm in my undercover outfit. I've got a hat that says "fuckers" upside down. I've got this big, huge chain. I've got a shirt that has a drawing of a doctor on it that says, "I'm no gynecologist, but I'll take a look." You know, I look like a piece of shit, right? She looks me up and down, and she gets on her phone, makes a phone call. 2 minutes later, this madam comes and opens these 2 steel doors. No signs, nothing. Welcomes me and my operators in. We could tell that we were being... And I talk about this, this and some of the other operations. I talk about it on the Sound of Freedom book. This is coming out the end of July. And I talk not only about the missions in the movie, with the Columbia rescue and, other, things in Haiti, etc., but a bunch of others. And I give parents very clear tools of things that they can do. We can talk about this in a second, of what they can do to keep their kids safe, etc. But I talk about tuning in to that still small voice of truth and these rescue missions of these kids that were divinely guided all the way through. So that's a long answer to your question of what things changed, but that's
Oh, I'm so glad you
the
did.
biggest.
It's the contrast for me of I had this. I mean, you're a phenomenal storyteller, of course,
Amazing.
but I had this visual of these operators who have this tech, right? They have so much tech, tracking, radar, all the things, and they're these like trackers. And then there's the very opposite of that, which is you in a parking lot in your outfit, hand on the heart, and universal tracking, like spiritual guidance, right? It's such an amazing contrast of two of those things working together on such an important mission. It's a really
What's beautiful, we sit here and marvel at the advancement of artificial intelligence and where that's going and how amazing and how much access to infinite information. It's not infinite information. Artificial intelligence is literally the combined information of all of humanity that's putting words and information on the internet, etc. That's all that it has access to. When you're able to tune in to that beautiful, quiet voice of universal truth, you have access to something that is infinitely more important in your life and infinitely more information than you could ever access through the entire internet with all the AI, with all of your ChatGPT, all of it combined. And I think it's important that people realize they don't even need that, all the AI stuff, if they can tap in.
I'm so glad you brought that up. The people, myself included, we need to hear more of that, for sure.
So many times parents will, they'll leave the movie, they'll leave the movie Sound of Freedom, and they'll say, "Oh, I want to do something. I want to go rescue kids in Mexico." Well, the worst thing you can do is go to undercover in Mexico. You're going to get arrested. You're probably going to get shot. Right? The best thing you can do is go home and hug your children, and that's something that the movie created a global awareness. Sound of Freedom became the #1 independent film in the world. Over 70 million people saw The Sound of Freedom. Hundreds of millions of children are safer because of it, or at least their parents have a level of awareness. But there's not a lot of tools there. And so what we tried to do within The Sound of Freedom is give parents very tangible tools that they can use. Situational awareness, understanding how to read a room, understanding how to... the first section of it, the first 4 or 5 chapters, is the making of an undercover operator, which teaches parents what we had to go through to be safe in those situations, to be able to tune in, etc. And so that's the first part. But then the last is all about identifying, changes in behavior in your kids, things that you can do. The best thing you can do to help fix this is to go home and hug your kids. And parents are like, "Well, how does that fix it? That's just hugging my kids." No, that you need a relationship with your children where they can very comfortably come to you and say when something's off. When to say, "Hey, you know what, Dad, I don't like it when you tell me to hug Uncle Harry. He touches us weird, and he tells us we should have secrets outside of you, or this babysitter showing us pornography, or we're going to this friend's house and he took pictures of us and now he's going to show it around the internet, around the school, unless we do other things." Or more important than that, you need a relationship with your kids where they can comfortably come to you and say, "Hey, Dad, I screwed up. You need to be her 911, where she can say, 'Dad, I was chatting online with this boy who was 13, and he sent me some pictures, and he encouraged me to send him pictures, and I did, inappropriate ones, and now he wants videos, and now he says we should meet this place.'" It might not even be a 13-year-old. That might be a 45-year-old dude that's talking to your child. In fact, it's important to know that the children that get taken to another place, another country, they don't come from healthy homes. They come from broken families, a broken foster care program, etc. However, the majority of children who are being exploited and even sold for these horrific things, The majority of them sleep in their own beds at night, and their parents don't even know. So parents are like, what? Yeah. I can't tell you how many of our operations, it was the babysitter, it was the aunt, it was the uncle that had already crossed that line with that child, was showing them pornography, was raping them quietly, and the parents had no idea that it was happening. And now they were showing up together with the traffickers to have this child exploited even more. It happens all the time. So again, you need to be your child's 911. You need to know the signs to look for. And the Sound of Freedom book, you can go to soundoffreedombook.com. You can go to Liberating Humanity and pre-order that right now. And or on July 29th, it'll be out available on Amazon, etc. It's going to give you as a parent the tools that you need to ensure that your child is not put in that situation with all these other kids. So that's some tools that you as parents can use to make your world a better place and your children's world a safer place.
Phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. And that's coming out next month.
It is. Yep.
Amazing.
I'm curious, in the spirit of tools, do you have resources for the man or woman who wants to look in the mirror?
Absolutely.
More, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's what Liberating Humanity is all about. It starts with that man in the mirror, woman in the mirror. And you can go to liberatinghumanity.com. In fact, all of my social media is just Liberating Humanity, and all of it is just tools that parents can use, families can use to keep their children safe. We have a lot of things there, not only education courses from some of my undercover trainers on situational awareness and reading a room, etc., but other information on what to look for, and most importantly, some tools that you can use to start breaking free of those things that aren't supposed to be part of your future. Guys, if addictions are dictating your life, and it's ruining the relationships with your family, whether those, and guys, guys are like, oh, I'm not addicted. You know what? 90+% of men who are watching either currently or recently have had either an addiction to pornography, addiction to overworking, or addiction to alcohol, etc. Most pornography is, and a lot of guys are like, oh, I don't consider it an addiction. Yeah, go without it for a year, dude, right? It's an addiction, right? And like any hardcore addiction, it progresses. Just like I was talking about earlier with how for some guys trying to get that same fix, they need something harder to have that same fix. And for some of them, harder is either rape videos. For some of them, harder is a little bit younger. And pretty soon they're fantasizing about things they wouldn't have thought was attractive 5 years before. And so guys are like, oh, it's not progressing for me. Yeah, it is. It probably started out years ago as a teenager with a Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue, right? You're fantasizing there, and then it progresses to the Victoria's Secret lingerie models, right? And then it progresses to just still booby shots, and then still nudes, and then videos, and then it's progressing. It's progressing, and it's insatiable, just like any hardcore drug is insatiable. So it's so important to get the help that you need to break free from that. We have information on the child liberation, or on the Liberating Humanity, about the retreats that people can get more information about how that works. Find a trained facilitator. If right now we're running those things in Latin America because we're still working on changing the laws in the U.S. They've been decriminalized in some states, and soon they will be decriminalized nationwide. But it's so important that people understand the proper use of these tools. They are not recreational. It's not, hey, let's go hang out with our friends. It's an incredible opportunity to create that state of neuroplasticity, to create some real long-term change when it comes to your addictions. We have, at one of the doctors we work with, uses some heavier ones like ayahuasca, but in doing so, he has an 85% success rate in helping people break free of cocaine and heroin addictions using Aya. So these are powerful tools when used correctly.
Amazing. Paul, what else do you have going on, like in the near future? What other things are you working on?
I'm on a rampage right now, being on as many podcasts as I can before the book comes out. Because, the Sound of Freedom book, I think, is important to have a really good launch the end of July. However, as soon as that is out, my next book that I'm almost done with is called Infinite Abundance, The Conscious Capitalist, right? Where, because of my background in finance, and now with my complete connection with things that I didn't have before, I've come to an understanding that so many of us in business work in a dog-eat-dog world, in a zero-sum game where we think if I'm going to make $1 million, other people have to not have $1 million, etc. Not understanding that we literally live in a world of infinite abundance. My first chapter is called Scarcity versus Abundance. Your economics teacher lied to you, right? Because the definition of economics is the division of scarce resources, which is a fallacy. We have enough resources where everybody can have all the food we could ever eat, all the clothes we could ever wear. And when we understand that we live in this world of abundance and understand how to create real value for value, it's gonna transform the way that we do business. And then the book that'll come out sometime next year is the one, Are You Listening? With My Hand on My Heart, talking about how to meditate, how to tune in, how to trust your intuitions and allow that divine light that we all hold inside of us, that divine light to guide us in ways that we could never imagine. In all of the technological advancements of humanity doesn't compare to tuning in to that infinite source of truth.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. You have anything?
Man, I mean, I feel like we need to have another conversation at some point.
We probably should. I've been talking for an hour and 11 minutes already. I'm probably boring all of your people, but
No, not at all.
I would love to have further conversations as we continue down this road. And it's all about just, creating a world for our kids and our grandkids that doesn't have things like trafficking in it, that doesn't have things like, the abuse of power when it comes to our doctors and our church leaders and our political leaders, where we don't have to wonder if three-letter agencies are behind the Jeffrey Epstein situation or beyond. I mean, there's so many things that we need to fix. We need to drain the swamp globally of all of this crap, and it all starts with the man in the mirror. And so yeah, I would be very open to having some beautiful conversations in the future as well.
Well, this one was certainly beautiful. I am, my Frank knows me, my brain moves quickly. There's a lot of things I'm thinking about. Definitely want to check out your retreat opportunities, and I'm most definitely going to be reading the books as they are released.
Beautiful.
And the last thing I want to say is it just really, just thank you for. Sometimes mentorship looks like, in my mind, it's like this one-on-one. You're with somebody, you spend time with somebody, and just in this conversation and the work that you've already done, the mentorship that you've provided for me sitting here is incredible. So I'll be digesting quite a bit of that, and
Yes.
really tend to want to reflect on myself in general. But man, you cranked up the volume on that immensely. So, and I embrace that. So thank you.
Thank you. Super grateful for this time with you and your audience today. And I look forward to staying in touch and maybe doing another episode someday.
Love that. Thank you so much,
Amazing, Paul. Thank you so much for everything that you do. Thank you for your time today, brother.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for connecting with us on today's episode of the Emotion Podcast, where we discuss all things mental health. Connect every week as we explore incredibly intimate stories of persistence and hope, delve into mental health education, and explore valuable resources. Available on YouTube, Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And visit emotionwellness.com for more information.